A couple of days later at the warehouse. No one had been there to greet me when I entered the warehouse through the hidden door. Usually one of the vampires is ready and waiting, apparently always managing to hear when I'm coming, but this time there is no one. Pinching my lips in confusion, I move through the tangled mass of hallways until I can hear some noise. The door to the room nearby is already ajar, and Unit Bravo's familiar voices are pouring out. I swing it open to find a large, well-decorated kitchen spread out before me. I don't even have time to step fully inside before Nat looks up from where she's hunched over a rustic rectangular wooden table and hits me with, "They're called Ma-loosed." What? I stare at her for a moment before blinking back my confusion. Nat straightens herself, pushing away from the stack of books and pages poured out over the freshly waxed surface of the table. I can smell the sharp tang of the wax all the way from here. "The supernaturals from the carnival," she explains. "They're called Ma-aluzet. They're supposed to be an Estonian myth which fits with what we already concluded about them," Ava adds as she steps closer to the table. "Not much of a myth anymore," Farah says from her place on one of the matching chairs. She's playing with a ripe peach from a heap of them arranged on a ceramic stand. She goes to swing her feet up onto the table edge, but Nat bats them away before she gets the chance. "Obviously," Morgan agrees. As usual, she's managed to find the darkest corner of the kitchen, one hip balanced against a marble countertop. "A myth?" I repeat. "So the agency doesn't know about them?" "No," a voice answers. We all look to one side as my mother walks into the room. "I've contacted the closest facility to where they are supposed to originate, but they've only heard rumors, no genuine sightings." "Then I guess that makes us lucky," I reply with a half smile. Morgan snorts a sharp breath at my comment. "What are they doing here?" "They are thought to be a type of guardian spirit. From what I can find, they were mostly supposed to help keep moral order amongst those that live on their land," Nat explains with a frown. Ra looks over her shoulder to Nat. "And what? Now they've stepped into the big leagues?" "Maybe not," I reply, a vague recollection of something I saw during my research beginning to surface. "There are different types of the same supernatural races, right? Like branches in an evolutionary tree. It's a possibility that these Ma-aluzet are an offshoot of their original race who came through the portal." Nat beams a smile over at me. "Incredible, detective. Your supernatural knowledge is already better than some on this team." She doesn't name names. I can't help but feel a swell of pride bubble inside of me. "Is there anything we can take from the myth that might apply to these supernaturals?" Ava asks, seeming more keen to discuss tactics than folklore. Nat shrugs. "They do seem tied to a certain place." "The carnival," I say. Nat nods. "Likely. The original legend says they lived in caves, so it makes sense these Ma-aluzed still need a base of operations to work from, to draw magic from." "But that still doesn't explain what they're doing here," Farah groans. "Or how we go about stopping them," Ava adds in a tense voice. "We don't need to stop them," Rebecca interjects, coming to stand among the group. "If they are unknown to the agency, then it's possible they have no idea we exist. We need to invite them to sign a treaty before any other action is taken. It's protocol." She glances about the group. "This doesn't have to end in a fight." Hmm. Hmm. Sure, we'll keep quiet and listen. I don't say anything, letting the others form a plan we can follow instead. "Even if you offer the chances to sign a treaty, they may not want to accept," Nat says. "In which case, it still doesn't need to end in hostilities. We have many supernaturals who have turned down the treaty but still live alongside us and humans without issue," Rebecca explains. "And if they keep causing an issue?" Morgan asks, fingering a long cigarette between her finger and thumb. She sighs. "If they won't see reason at all, or continue to cause harm to others," her voice wavers for a moment, "they will be considered rogue supernaturals and be dealt with accordingly." "Well, it seems apparent the next step should be to at least talk to them," Nat suggests as a heavy air hovers over the room like a brewing storm. I place my fingers on my chin. That's risky, especially as the disease can take down even supernaturals. "I agree," Ava says with a nod. "But maybe less so if I do it," I add. 5 pairs of eyes instantly swivel in my direction. I don't think he can read me, or what's in my mind anyway. He did call me silent inside, which suddenly makes some kind of sense. I glance over the group. It's obvious he can see somewhat inside people's heads, right? Farah shifts on the chair as she turns to look at me. You sure? It'll get pretty dangerous. Not that you can't handle yourself, but this is still a big ask. My chest warms at her words. Yeah, I'm sure. They do make a good point, Morgan states, surprising not only me but everyone else. Jules is probably the smartest choice, and they are part of the team now, right? There's not even a small hint of sarcasm to those words. I'm sure I can find out what they're doing here, if nothing else, I add. That might not be the best approach, Nat says. Not only do we not want to make them hostile, we don't want to put them on the defensive either. I hold back a sigh. But someone has to go, right? Farah says. And better only one or two than the whole lot of us to scare them off. Or worse, Ava comments. All right, Rebecca says with finality, having been noticeably quiet during this part of the discussion. She wrings her hands in front of herself for just a moment before holding them straight at her sides. Jules will head to the carnival, where the agency will do our best to negotiate a meeting, and Morgan glances up. You'll go as backup. She gives a nod at the order. There's no argument or even a roll of her eyes. Sure. Nearing midnight at the carnival. The agency had been successful in organizing a peaceful meeting with the Ma Aluset. Unfortunately, the meeting time agreed upon was midnight. I stamp my feet under dew-covered grass as a chill settles over me. It had been quite warm throughout the day, but as Morgan and I had reached Hollow's Peak, the night seemed to drain of warmth. A dampness hangs in the air, droplets of it catching on the sleeves of my coat and sparkling in the moonlight, which manages to pierce the mist. Everything is still. The fog had rolled in behind us as we'd walked here, thick enough to cloud our vision and make the leaves ripple on the trees. It had continued to thicken and encircle the carnival in a foggy barrier so dense that even now we can't see out of it. And no one can see in. There's a gentle pling from nearby. I twist around to find Morgan leaning with pursed lips against the support of a striped tent, flicking her fingers against a wind chime hanging from it. I stare over at her. Bored? Unbelievably, she replies, flicking her fingers against the ornament once again so that a tinkling sound reverberates around the eerily silent space. Tents and stalls are empty. All the lights are out. Any music seems to have been sucked away by the mist, though a sugary sweetness still tinges the air. Maybe we should take a look around, I suggest. Ava said we wait here. She moves to stand closer to me. So we wait here. I'm guessing this kind of thing isn't exactly your scene, I say, partly to fill the silence and partly just for something to do while we wait. Carnivals? Morgan clarifies. I nod. She chews on the question for a moment. I don't know. My head swivels to face her. Your childhood was that long ago? I've no idea. I blink. You don't remember? She laughs, but it's strangely soft, something I've never heard from her before. No, I don't remember much from the older days before I became... Well, this revelation is rather sudden, and it takes a while for my brain to process it. Do you remember other things in your life? What does it matter? Morgan asks with a defensive huff. All I need to remember is what I'm living now. Her head suddenly snaps to one side, a serious frown tightening her features. Someone's coming. The mist parts, curling and whirling in the air around a figure who steps out of the fog. A smile sits on the unfamiliar face. A woman moves towards us, her layers of earth-colored clothing seeming to drag against her slim frame, the ragged hem of her skirt revealing bare feet which sink into the deep blades of wet grass. How her toes aren't turning blue from the cold, I'll never know. She shifts closer. The grass barely moves as she does. Her vibrant blue eyes glimmer like stars in the dark of the night. It's good to finally meet you. Finally? I ask. She merely gives a coy smile at that. My name is Sanja. I work here as a fortune teller of sorts, she says. Where is everyone else? I ask, gesturing to the empty stalls and hibernating rides. At rest for the night. They are... Her words draw to a stop. They aid me when they are needed. Morgan and I share a glance at that mysterious and slightly concerning reply. But come, you are here to meet, and meet you shall. Her arm curls out to gesture for us to follow, which we do, all the way towards a shadowed tent, almost completely hidden by the mist. Stepping through the heavy canvas flaps of the tent is like stepping into another world. At first, I'm blasted by a waft of chill, moist air, which makes me pause. As I make my way further in, I can see that where there should be material walls, there is instead rock and stone, the craggy walls of a cabin. Water trickles out of cracks and dribbles into a nearby pool of blue-green water, which shimmers with a silver glow created by lights that drift in the air. The lights hover and dance near the level of the jagged ceiling above. A shiver of something strange and unusual settles over my skin. I try to brush the sensation away as though it were the lingering sensation of someone gently running their fingers over me. Sandra continues forward through the rocky tunnel, so we follow. The moss on the stony ground makes my steps a little unsteady, but thankfully it doesn't take long until the corridor opens into a small room, though it's still walled by rock. Chairs carved from old cracked wood have been set out in a circle at the center, and in one of them sits a figure I already know. In the chair, which has branches twined up the back into more of a throne than a seat, sits the supernatural who I assume is the Ma Aluset leader, the one I saw in the mirror and the one who sent his lackeys to my apartment. He's half angled in the chair, one ankle crossed over the other leg and one elbow propped against a chair arm, with his taloned fingers drumming against his pale lips. His long strands of hair, which tip over from his mohawk-type style, mask part of his black eyes. The sharpness of the silver lights floating above makes his skin almost translucent. His clothing, just as dark as his eyes, looks like something out of a fantasy book. A deep blue tunic with an engraved black leather waistcoat accentuates a long, lean torso. A somewhat flamboyant collar frames his pale neck. His silver detailed trousers are tucked into calf-high boots with straps binding them tightly to his legs. "Bark," Sandra says as she nears the man in apparent introduction. "These are the emissaries from the agency." She holds out a hand towards us, indicating we should now give some kind of greeting ourselves. I guess the meeting has started, and I get the feeling every move and word I make will have some kind of impression here. um, sure. "It's nice to meet you," I say to open the meeting. "I hope we can find some common ground in this meeting." His pale brows arc up a fraction, his eyes beneath them casting a quick assessment over me. When he's done, he pulls his fingers away from his mouth and nods. "You are welcome here. Do take a seat." I settle into one of the chairs, surprised to find it warm and comfy. Morgan doesn't join us. Instead, she favors almost blending into the shadowy wall at the entrance to the cabin. "What would you like to discuss?" Sandra asks, having now glided away from Falk as she leans against the wall with her hands curled in front of her. She is as still as a marble statue and just as elegant as one. My mind begins to go through the mental files I've made of the information my mother had told me I'd need to bring up. "We want to know why you're harming people here," I say. Might as well begin on the most important point. Falk frowns, pale brows drawing over dark eyes as the golden circles peer at me closely. "Harming? We do no such thing. We're dealing justice through judgment." Judgment seems to be a key word for this guy. I shake away the thought. "You deal justice by placing diseases on people?" "Those who deserve it, yes," he replies without remorse. "Humans have their own justice system." Oh, that's myself. "Humans have their own justice system, and the agency has one in place for supernaturals." I shift forward a little as I try to remember the script. "The way you deal justice is better," Falk finishes. "I've seen human justice, and it is lacking. This agency and their justice I've only recently come to know of, so cannot make true assessment on their ways." "You don't have trials or due process," I counter. He flicks one hand out. "We have no need of any. We can see into the guilt of a person's heart." He twists his hand back to rest it on his chest. "That is the only way to judge a soul." I disagree. I pause, my lips parted slightly as I begin to understand. "You judge a person on how guilty they feel, not their actual actions?" "We see the most defining moment of a person's life, human or supernatural, and judge their guilt on it. Those of guilty heart are punished, those of unburdened heart go free." That is not a good solution. Hmm. It's that's the worst thing. It isn't, because this is actually not true. This first reply, the first reply that says that's not justice, that's just judgment based on your opinion. It isn't. It's worse. It's not judgment based on their opinion. It's judgment based on the opinion of the party they're judging. If I stumble on the street and step on an ant and the ant dies and I feel horribly guilty over it, whereas someone else murders 25 people and doesn't feel guilty over it, I'll be punished. He won't be. That's the kind of judgment they're handing out. Hmm. Yeah, what about that? And what about when you broke into my house and threatened me? I snap. Your lackeys didn't judge Bobby at all before inflicting her with that disease. There's a downwards twitch of his lips. That was an exception. How is your justice fair if it has exceptions? I retort. He pauses for a moment before his features crease into a sneer. Your agency must have a purpose beyond discussing the Aluzet's way of being, Sandra asks. The way she says that, along with her more human appearance, makes it obvious she's not one of them, even if she works with them. Maybe works for them? I ignore the derailing train of thought. The agency wishes to offer a treaty with the Ma'aluzed, to offer them protection and shelter and to provide for them as long as they follow the treaty's guidelines. You do this for all supernaturals? Sandra asks. Those who sign the treaties, yes, I reply. Falk uncrosses his legs. Are we offered anything more in return? What do you want? I ask, not sure if taking demands is a good idea. He steeples his fingers, the talons clacking together as he does. Land. His hands drop to the arms of the chair as his voice drops to almost a growl. Something that will remain untouched and unspoiled. No humans to tear through it as they have done with our homes before. Protection is part of the deal, Morgan suddenly asks from the shadows. The agency protects supernaturals from humans and other supernaturals if we have to. She'd been so quiet I'd almost forgotten she is here. But you have humans working for you. Falk waits silently for a response. Yes, as you know, I'm human, I say, gesturing to myself. And what about the land? Falk asks. Morgan shrugs. We'll have to talk to the agency. You do that, vampire. He curls back into the chair. And we shall see if your terms are to our liking. After midnight, outside of the tent. A shiver catches me as I step out of the tent to once again be greeted by the inky black sky and the fresh air. I glance back over my shoulder to the tent and the cavern contained within it. There's no denying that was actual magic. Real magic. I blow out a puff of air at the fort, which makes the mist in front of me shimmer. Still goddamn freezing out here, Morgan moans as she snatches at her jacket to tug it farther around herself. No one follows us as we begin to make our way out of the circle of tents toward the fence of trees. How do you think it went? Well, you did you did not actually present the terms of your treaty. If they do not agree to the terms of your treaty, then the whole process of what you're now going to do is completely pointless. So I think it didn't go great. I ask after we manage to make it through the foggy barrier. The tips of my shoes are dripping with moisture from the grass, but thankfully heat remains in my toes. She sighs. Don't think they were too happy. The guy's heart was hammering, but hard to tell if it was anger or just their usual pulse rate. His eyes make it hard to tell because they don't have pupils, Morgan explains. I suddenly see why Rebecca asked her to come along. Guess we better report back to the others, I suggest. At least this is the most fun I've ever had at a carnival, she says with a surprising amount of enthusiasm. I glance over to her. I thought you don't remember having been to one. Exactly, she replies with a smirk. I chuckle, holding back an arching, leaf-laden tree branch for Morgan to pass before I follow as well. At the carnival in Falk's tent. Humans protecting supernaturals from other humans? Falk almost spits the words as though the idea is impossible. You truly believe such a thing? Yes, I've seen the truth of what they speak in my visions, Sandra replies. He sneers a little at that, stepping away from her slightly as she drifts past him in a waft of fruit-scented warmth. Maybe this modern world has changed too much for us to be a part of, Falk, the teller suggests in a calm tone. For how long have we wondered? What if they could offer us a home? A home? You think they could honestly protect any land they offer us? Sandra frowns. Is it at least not worth considering? We have a duty to pass judgment, a duty the world has outgrown, she interrupts. These people offer their own justice. Let them do what we no longer must. He softens, though he doesn't let her see it, turning away to stare into the dribble of water that sparkles as it falls from a crack in the rocky wall. Bach continues to stare harder at the water. Purity of it, nothing hidden within it, all just clear. We cannot stay this way forever. Footsteps echo about the small cavern as Sandra glides from the room. Bach flops back into his chair and sighs. In the living room of the warehouse. A fire greets us, along with the faces of the rest of Unit Bravo, as we make it back into the living room of the warehouse. I bask in the warmth of the flames for a moment as I step through the doorway. Bra almost tips over the armchair she was in as she bounds over to me. You're back. I can't help but smile. Safe and sound. I was about to come scouting the forest in case you'd gotten lost or something, she admits with a bright smile. How did the meeting go? Ava asks in a much less enthusiastic tone. Bra rolls her eyes. They've only just got back. Give them a minute. You know, I'm back too. Morgan scoffs. Bra peers around me. Oh, hey. Morgan sighs before moving off to her usual shadowed corner. I move to settle into one of the armchairs, Fra coming to stand beside my seat as I do. So, how did it go? Fra asks. They at least seem to be somewhat open to the idea of a treaty, but they had demands, I say. Of course they did. It's one of the few times I've heard Ava be sardonic. What did they want? Land, Morgan answers. That's it? Land that's protected from humans destroying it. Ah, that's mine. Land that's protected from humans destroying it. I point a finger up. They were adamant on that part. It could have been worse, Nat says, glancing over at Ava with a shrug. She nods. True. We'll have to let Agent Langford know in the morning, and the agency can decide what to do from there. I catch sight of the time on an ornate gold-framed carriage clock on the mantelpiece. It's already past 2 in the morning. Then I better get going myself. I stand from my seat, arching my back and drawing my arms over my head to stretch out my tired limbs. Bra's eyes shimmer a little brighter as she watches my motion intently. After a small yawn, I make towards the door. Didn't you walk here? Nat asks. It's rather late for you to be walking home now. I turn back to face them. You should stay tonight, Bra bursts. We've got a room for you already. My eyes widen. You have? Of course, Ava says matter-of-factly. You're part of Unit Bravo, and a room for you here makes sense for times such as these. Tiredness sweeps over my body like a tangled net threatening to grapple me right here if I don't sleep soon. All right, I say. Bra leaps up. Excellent. Follow me. Here. Bra calls as she finally stops at a wooden door partway down one of the many snaking hallways. It may be my room, but it's going to be a nightmare to find again after that labyrinth. The door swings open and I step inside, letting out a brief shocked laugh as I do. It looks just like home. A variety of warm colors add depth to the room. Blankets and cushions aplenty spread over a large bed with a patchwork quilt hanging at the end. Even the decor is as eclectic as the collection in my apartment. Wow. The word escapes me in a rush of breath. We did our best, Farah chuckles. Next time you come, you could bring some spare stuff to keep here, but until then, Nat gave you the essentials. She points further into the room at a door on the far side. Bathroom's through there. Sleep tight. And then I'm left on my own in this room, which is so familiar but completely new. Is this really my life now? Having my own room in a house full of vampires? Having to stay the night because a meeting with a supernatural held in some magical cavern-type tent ran late? Sure. Yeah, sure. Sucking in a breath, I enjoy the fresh pine scent of the forest which wafts in through the open window on the opposite side. It helps clear my head somewhat. Enough to think logically about this whole situation, one I'm in the middle of, no matter how I feel. Might as well just deal with this as it comes. I finally shake out of my thoughts before flopping onto the bed, instantly falling asleep under the warmth of its softness. Uh, well, who is the voice? Detective Langford. Who would call me Detective Langford? I mean, at the end it goes, "Have you met?" Ah, it's a nightmare from Morgan, isn't it? Not Morgan. What am I talking about? Murphy. Detective Langford. A voice hisses through the darkness. I flinch at the horrifying familiarity of it, but my hands won't move. My feet won't budge. I glance down at the blood-stained leather straps binding me in place. A face snakes into the only streak of light in a void of shadow. Bloodied fangs glint viciously. You missed me, detective. Ah! Bolting awake, I find I can't move and panic seizes me. My heart pounds and beats with a ferocious need to escape, to free myself. Adrenaline sinks from my veins when I realize I've only managed to twist myself tightly into the duvet. I fall back against the pillows and let out a groan of relief. It was only a nightmare. Another one about Murphy. Guess that shouldn't be a surprise. I can only keep the traumatic memories buried for so long. Sweat stains my skin, heat making the confines of the duvet too hot to cope with. I throw it off, get up, and head for the bathroom. After cooling myself with a splash of water, I make to head for bed once more when a noise has me pausing by the door. Unease still creeps like claws over my skin, so I figure I might as well walk it off and find out who else is up. Nearing dawn in the living room. The noise leads me towards the living room. Through the door, which has been left ajar, I can see the wavering glow of firelight. Cracks and pops of heat already greet me before I've even warily opened the door. Inside, the homely antique decor is bathed in soft oranges and yellows. Heavy curtains have been drawn over the windows. The only sign that it's so late is the time on the carriage clock, which ticks away to itself. My gaze then falls on the lone figure in the room. Sitting unusually stiff and silent on the worn leather sofa is Farah. Her amber eyes are blazing from the flames, which sway under her unwavering focus. She stares at them with an intensity I've never seen, or expected to ever see, from her. A strange forlornness drags slightly at her features, like she's lost and can't blink out of it. My heart beats in a sudden concern and forces my feet forward, farther into the room. Hearing my footsteps, Farah snaps her head to the side to look at me. A smile attempts to mask the focused, sad expression on her face from just a moment before. Jules, she exclaims, her voice slightly hoarse from the heat which radiates through the room. My skin prickles at the temperature, so I can't imagine how she can sit there so casually in her usual outfit without sweating. Hey, I say in simple greeting, walking closer towards the sofa. Hey yourself. Her gaze flashes over me in quick inspection. Trouble sleeping? Yeah, sure. I shrug in dismissal. I had a nightmare, so figured I'd walk it off. Shame, she mock pouts. Here I was hoping you'd just come to find me. Once again she smiles, and once again it's stained by whatever mood had made her so serious. She clambers to kneel on the sofa seat, resting her hands on the arm in order to lean towards me. You know what you need? I stare blankly at her. A massage. She rubs her hands together, then mimics a massaging motion. I hear it helps with all kinds of stress. Yeah, sure, go on. I suppose it couldn't hurt to try. Well, have you gotten massages before, Jules? It definitely can hurt. I say, my muscles tense enough, I think I might be able to imitate Ava. Farah brightens, flopping back to sit on the sofa cushion with her legs spread, then pointing to the plush carpeted floor in front of her. Take a seat. I smile softly as I move to do as instructed. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, I rest my back on the front of the sofa and roll my lips together as her legs move closer around me. Comfy? She asks, curling around to face me as much as possible. I nod. Her hands come to rest gently on my shoulders, her fingers moving up and down the curve of my neck before dropping to my shoulder blades. I sink into the caress. Any remnants of the nightmare drift away under her touch. Well, until she starts the actual massage. Ah! I jerk away, twisting around to face her while rubbing at my shoulder. She winces in apology. Sorry. I thought this was supposed to be relaxing, I ask with a chuckle. Yeah, I've never given a massage before, but I just wanted to help. Thought it was worth a try. Shaking my hand with a soft laugh, I push myself up to slide onto the sofa beside her. So, what were you thinking about before I came in? Mm-hmm, she asks, seeming to be lost in heavy thoughts once more. You were staring into the fire pretty intensely. I glance over her. You seem to have a lot on your mind. She leans back into the sofa. Yes, I was just thinking about stuff. Stuff? Even after 7 years, this world still feels weird at times. My eyes widen. You've only been here 7 years? She nods. Yep. Fell through the portal, got picked up by the agency, and joined a recent opening they had in Unit Bravo. She chuckles at the memory. It was all a quick introduction to this world. The tension which had made her so stiff before seems to have relaxed, at least, and she slumps into the cushions of the seat. You miss the Echo world? No, never. Her voice is tense. I lean closer to her. Was what we saw in the mirror at the carnival the Echo world? Yep. I hesitate. And the woman I saw with you? She crawls forward at the question. There's a long moment of silence. She was my mum. Did she come through the portal with you? She stares ahead, lost in intent thought. No. It's difficult to forget the image in the mirror. Farah and the woman I now know is her mother running from something. Something they feared. No, Jules? No. So quiet here. Let's go with that. The air presses down on us with the sudden strength of the deluge. I keep silent under the weight of it, instead reaching out to rest a comforting hand on her shoulder. But my mum wasn't what I was thinking about, Farah says, apparently eager to change the subject. I remove my hand, though I stretch out my fingers, longing to have kept them there. Oh? I was thinking about how I'd just gotten used to this world and how it all feels, and now it's all different again. I frown. Why? Ugh, Jules. She glances over to me. Because of you. She scoots across the seats until our legs are almost touching. Everything feels more with you around. Heat is hotter, sounds are louder, touch is more intense. She traces her fingers in the air above my arm, not touching, though I sure wish she would. I can't seem to look away from her gaze. My heart thuds harder with each beat. Do you know what I mean? She asks, hope hanging onto each word. uh, I, I kind of wish there was an answer that was just like, no, what are you talking about? I wouldn't choose it, of course not, but it would just be funny. That is kind of good as well. Not sure. Yes. Let's go with that. I give a certain nod, not sure what else I can say when she put it so perfectly. Her eyes flutter closed for a moment in relief before flicking open to gaze at me once again. It's so easy being around you, like you've always been here. Or more like you should have always been here. Her hand falls onto mine. So don't go anywhere, all right? A smile tugs at my mouth. I won't. The motion seems to attract her attention as her focus falls on my lips. She swallows hard. I'd really like to kiss you now. Her gaze searches my expression for permission. Ugh, yeah, sure, why not? Go on. I dip my head into a nod, my lips already tingling with anticipation. She gently raises a hand to my cheek, her fingers warm and gentle against my skin. Her thumb brushes along the curve of my lower lip. My eyes close as she leans forward. It's gentle at first, barely a whisper of her lips touching, as though I'm only tasting the anticipation that still lingers on my mouth. Then her lips part farther to cover mine, and that's when I realize just how much I already feel for her in every way. Her mouth. Sorry, I can't do that with a straight face. Her mouth continues to move over mine in slow motions, both of us savoring every movement and taste. Her body angles closer to deepen the kiss in a way that steals my breath and thought. As her fingers move to curl around the back of my neck, I can feel her smile into the kiss. Whoa, Farah says, though through a breath as we break away. Her eyes open only to meet each other's. Her amber ones are as bright as real gemstones as they gaze at me. Happiness lights every part of her face. Yeah, I reply, enjoying the pleasure that permeates every fiber of my being, sparking and tingling like an electrical current through every nerve. Her hand trails down the side of my neck before her palm covers my collarbone. Your heart is racing. She's right. I place my hand on her wrist. feeling the rhythm of her pulse beat with the strength of a jackhammer. I smile. So is yours. The clock chimes a delicate tune from the mantelpiece, breaking the moment as we both look over to it. I hope you can sleep better now. I'm not so sure on that. I reply, breathing to let out some of the excitement. She beams, chuckling. I stand from the sofa. Yes, I better try though. My balance falters as Farah grasps my hand to tug me back down towards her. Her lips brush over mine in another kiss. She grins up at me. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't dreaming. Good night. And with happiness pulsing throughout my entire body, I head out of the room and back towards my bed to catch as much more sleep as I can. Back in the living room. It's hard for Farah to imagine if the smile will ever leave her face. She gingerly touches her lips to enjoy the sensation that lingers on them. But the thrumming of her heart is stemmed as a niggling worry crawls like a worm into her chest. What if Jules only sees it as a kiss when it meant so much more to me? She quickly shakes the thought away, not allowing any kind of negative questions to ruin the exquisite moment she's still reveling in. She slouches down further into the sofa cushions, leans her head back, and lets out a long, contented, incredibly happy sigh. Next chapter.